exciting moments. Now, before we jump into those player introductions, I do want to note, yes, you are seeing that correctly on the overlay. Neeb is currently up 1-0. No, he didn't miss game number 1. The way that this series or this entire tournament works is that there's a double elimination bracket. Astrea lost a series earlier in the playoffs, so he dropped to the lower bracket. Neeb never lost a series. In fact, he's just not lost any series for the entire playoff bracket. So he gets the advantage of making it to the grand finals without losing with a 1-0 lead. And of course, Astrea is going to have to overcome that in this best of 7. With that being out of the way, let's go ahead and jump in, introduce the players. Starting down here on the bottom left-hand side of the map, we have our red Protoss player from Onside Gaming. He is Neeb.
And his opponent, playing from Alpha X, coming from a clean victory against Scarlet, it is Astrea. He wants a second gas in a second here, I would presume. But yeah, both players have opened with a pylon on the low ground, gateway scouts. So they spot each other's probe on the other side, or as they are crossing in the middle of the map, which is what makes me think Astrea probably wants a gas here, because otherwise Neeb is going to delay the expansion of Astrea. Neeb already took his second gas if you look on his side of things, and Neeb is going to delay the expansion of Astrea. He's not going inside, and now Astrea takes his gas, but I think he was hoping that Neeb would go and scout him inside, where he would be able to drop a Nexus. I mean, it's a big hope to have, though, and this is a little bit problematic already, because I mean, Astrea is going to oversaturate his mineral line before he can start mining the gas, presumably, at least by 1 probe. Actually, it's not too bad. It's just 1 probe that has to wait, so it's fine.
Yeah, I think it ends up being okay. I know that there are, like, if you look at, for example, Neeb's mineral line or gas mining, for example, like you can have 2 and 3 and kind of split things up, and just you have 2 workers on gas for a little bit, and then you kind of end up making things work out as you gradually saturate, or you can do the Astrea version and kind of take a slightly later gas, but immediately saturated with all 3 workers. So ends up working out. No kind of delays there, and we end up seeing with the probe being picked off. Since the Zealot was forced out for both sides, that Nexus comes down for Astrea.
Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised that Astrea is not continuing to block the expansion of Neeb here, as he's going to be able to take it here. He will have 400 before Astrea can go back to that low ground. And yeah, Astrea could have definitely delayed or prevented that. So yeah, the probe, his leash, you know, is a little bit more existing than Neeb's was, as his got picked off pretty early on there. And yeah, I mean, mining the gas with 2 versus 3, you know, the first 2 actually mine significantly better than the third one. So
that's true.
You know, there's something to be said for taking that gas earlier still, and why it is probably by far the most common approach. Neeb and Astrea both going into the Stargate, but a little bit of deviation here, as Astrea is going to play Defender and look for those potential oracles opening with the Phoenix, whereas Neeb is going for the aggression with the Oracle, and this Stalker is kind of trapped.
Yeah, it gets a little bit weird. The Phoenix is definitely going to have to play a bit of a part in this, I think, just because it gets a little bit strange or awkward otherwise, just because Zealot, funny enough, does out DPS a Stalker. And now with the pylon getting canceled, it lets the Adept in, but at the same time, the Adept is immediately picked up. It's actually still not too bad for Neeb, just because 1, he forced energy for the Phoenix lift up nice and early on. 2, he knows that there's Phoenix, so he knows a little bit better what to do with his Oracle. And now 3, he might even be able to force the Phoenix back as the Zealot runs in.
Yeah, the Zealot is scouting for the Phoenix. If the Phoenix show up in the natural, then Neeb knows that he can go in, but the Phoenix are not showing up. However, there's a shield battery already on the side of Astrea. Neeb, a very daring stasis trap there right in the middle, and will actually clip 4 workers, including a couple from the gas, which is going to be pretty annoying for Astrea there.
Even runs in to try and find a few workers over at the natural. He's going to end up recalling this. It is not going to get out alive.
Yeah, the next 2 Phoenix arrived. They were, of course, off-screen for Neeb, so he couldn't have known that they were that close. And it was still a very close affair. So Neeb kind of like losing double there, right? Like, does kill 3 workers. Does stall a little bit of mining in the main, but losing the Oracle is not ideal. And Neeb has transitioned into Phoenix of his own. And this is really, really cool, because usually as the Phoenix defending player against the Oracle, you abandon the Phoenix tech because you anticipate that your opponent is going to be going into Blink faster or something of the likes, right? So usually your opponent will be thinking, okay, he has Phoenix first, so it's very difficult to catch up, so I'll just abandon that tech. But in this case, Neeb actually gets ahead on the Phoenix count, which is gigantic because it will grant them air control. Now revealing the Phoenix, I wonder if that will prompt Astrea to make an extra one too.
Now, it's worth mentioning that Astrea did actually see the Stargate and when it was producing a Phoenix. So Astrea should have some idea that there was like the potential that there's at least going to be one Phoenix out, if not more. So we aren't seeing any change. Actually, Astrea goes for an Oracle.
Yeah, nuts.
Yeah, this is definitely one of the kind of weird, funny gambles that you can do in PvP where you say, well, you know, the last thing they would expect me to do is make an Oracle if we're doing Phoenix versus Phoenix Wars, because you're just taking time away where you could be making more Phoenix and stuff. And the Phoenix should theoretically hard counter the Oracle, but oftentimes the Phoenix end up being kind of preoccupied dealing with your opponent's Phoenix or zoning out prisms or just generally helping out on the map. And then the Oracle can kind of sneak in and get a surprising amount of damage done.
Absolutely. And Niall was showing us the main there, and there's a purpose to that. Of course, there is a shield battery already done. And normally, I mean, when you scout the Phoenix as early as Neeb did, you can skip the shield battery, right? Because the shield battery doesn't actually offer you anything against the Phoenix, because the Phoenix are going to be able to out DPS any probes that they pick up anyway in that mineral line. So it's kind of interesting that Neeb did go for the shield battery already, because it renders this Oracle of Astrea kind of useless. In the natural, however, the shield battery is not perfectly positioned, and that is the angle that Astrea is looking to take. So still a little bit of room for Astrea to wiggle before Neeb kind of retrieves his probes in proximity, in close proximity of that shield battery to shield them. So good choice from Astrea there as well, as Neeb is now crossing the map with his Phoenix.
And he will be able to ignore the shield battery with his Phoenix if he decides to dive in and try and pick off a few workers here or there. He does have the superior number as well, but has to be mindful of the fact that Blink is finished up and there are quite a few Stalkers out for both of these players. Oracle's getting closer and closer to approaching the natural expansion of Neeb, but that pylon should be scouting things out. Astrea immediately just turns around, but I think the Phoenix have already identified. All right, there's an Oracle on the map. Can Astrea even get the recall off in time? I'm not so sure.
It's going to be difficult because there's the two Phoenix that are actually going to find the Oracle. If one of the Phoenix had found the Oracle, then Astrea could have gone for the recall. But because it was the clump of two, it's going to be impossible for him. So he's not even going to try. Instead, he's going to move out into the map. His charge is a little bit faster than Neeb's as well. Not sure that this is going to be the ideal base to attack with the charge, but with the Blink, however, and the number of Stalkers that he has, it's going to be perfect for the time being. And where are the rest of the units of Neeb? There they are. They were tucked in, but the Phoenix are actually getting involved, and the Phoenix of Neeb are a little bit late to the party. Is that going to be enough for Astrea, as he's going to be looking to, or Neeb is going to be looking for a punishment now on the chase? Lifts off a couple of, one of the Stalkers only, actually, as Astrea will blink back to prevent further damage.
Yeah, nice defense there from Neeb. He also has a fourth base that's nearly finished up during all of this. Even though he's a little bit later on some of the upgrades, like a charge or something, it really does feel like Neeb had a really, really solid defensive posture there. He's gotten up a little worker lead, and he's staying tight on like the +1 upgrades and everything. I actually think Neeb taking a really, really nice couple of small leads there.
Yeah, picking up one too many probes there, however, is going to waste a little bit of Phoenix energy, but he has plenty to spare, as Astrea is going to come back to defend. He does have a faster charge, but he's not going to make use of it. There's no timing where Astrea is going to hit Neeb before Neeb is ready. And I would say the prime position for Astrea to hit would be the fourth base of Neeb, as it is going to be a little bit more wide open of a space for the Zealots. This is a good position for the Zealots to stand as well, for the same reason on the other side of the map. Two Zealots are going to be found, however, by the Stalkers. Going to reveal their charge as well. And Neeb is going to continue crossing the map.
This gets really dangerous for Neeb. Neeb didn't actually reinforce Zealots nearly as much as Astrea has, and those charge lots are going to make all the difference over here. If Astrea can actually get them involved in the fight, they're so far behind right now, but as soon as they get involved from behind, Neeb is going to be in a lot of trouble. He's going to start blinking back, but these charge lots run so fast, they're going to be able to close the distance, and Neeb suddenly going to be in a world of trouble in these fights.
Yeah, absolutely. Even though the attacks were off sync for Astrea, I can see the kind of the thought process. That was brilliance from Neeb to start the fight, because he just stood his ground against the smaller numbers that Astrea had. And it's a difficult assessment to make, because on paper, you see charge lots attacking you, you probably think you gotta disengage, right? If your opponent is confidently attacking you, you disengage. If Neeb had blinked back, if Neeb had just, run away from the first engagement, he would have gotten destroyed by the backstab. Instead, he takes a little bit better of a trade to start, but like you said, Astrea eventually overwhelms, and Neeb has to tacktail and run towards the side of the map. However, the game still very much even.
Yeah, and now it's a funny situation. The charge lots are great in that open field, But as the kind of numbers go higher and higher, it's 22 stalkers to 6 right now. Neeb in these choke points is really going to find a much better situation, especially if you can get back to the shield battery, make use of that blink stalker upgrade.
Yeah, that choke really served him well, and now, like you said, he is retreating to the safety of the shield batteries in his third. So great trades here from Neeb, and that was terrible for Astrea. So things are looking very dire now for Astrea, and Neeb, even with the Immortal, he will be able to push him back for the time being, and he has a very commanding lead in this game now.
Yep, snipes off the Observer that was revealed by Revelation on the Oracle. Neeb now has 20 stalkers to 4, and, well, Astrea is just counting on charge lot at this point. But this is the really scary thing for Astrea to deal with, is that Neeb still has his own charge upgrade. He could actually just warp in charge lots and then just have equal-ish number of charge lots, but with 20 more stalkers than his opponent. That is the kind of position that Neeb is in. It's just a question of whether or not he can find the right angle to actually attack in from.
Yeah. +3 is going to be the one advantage that Astrea is going to have to work with when he finishes that. But that put aside, it's not looking particularly good. 68 workers to 80 doesn't bode well for him in the long run. Should Neeb equalize on upgrade fronts, Astrea is going to be in a world of trouble and not really have a lot to work with. So maybe Disruptors would be a good transition point. The Templar Archives is really nice for Archons if Neeb hits, you know, with predominantly charge lots, and he does have a large number of them. So let's look at the army of Astrea here. He also has a lot of charge lots, but again, those Archons likely to take part and shred through Neeb's army. But I mean, look at the supply, right? That's the issue.
Yeah, the supply is definitely going to be a massive issue. I think one thing that is nice is once Archons get in the mix, Defender's Advantage can be a little bit stronger just because shield batteries with Archons compare really well together. Sniping off the Robo is a good start here for Neeb. Archons also finally getting involved here for Neeb as well as they try and move in, but all the Zealots are on the right-hand side, so the Archons not actually attacking the units that they want to.
Yeah, this looks very difficult for Astrea because he doesn't have much of a backbone to his army. It's mostly in those Zealots that are trapped, right? So as far as range versus range, Neeb has much more damage output. Now, finally, the Zealots are free from Astrea to get onto Neeb's side of things. There's still an Archon outputting damage, but one got picked off as well at the front. Now, Immortal exposed here as he does damage to the Stalkers, and it seems like Neeb, regardless, is going to have enough damage here. Lifts up one of the Immortal's key pieces, given that it's mostly Stalkers fighting on the side of Neeb. And with a blink forward, he should be able to claim this engagement and perhaps the game now.
Yeah, fantastic micro here from Neeb. He's going to be able to overpower his opponent with not only some of the micro, but also just raw sheer numbers. GG gets called. And Neeb takes the first game in a interesting kind of trade between the two players, opening up relatively similarly, but ending up in a very different place.
Yeah, the Oracle from Astrea, the Oracle transition really didn't pay off, but Neeb played such a good game as well. And Astrea, I mean, he had the charge slots, but Neeb utilizing the choke points, like you were saying, right? Like he was just doing a really good job with positioning through and through. So Astrea gonna have to go back to the drawing board here.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it is one of those strange games where a lot of things happen that I don't think would are not really replicatable, or like you can't count on them being replicated in the following games. So, for example, Astrea going for the charge, like the mass charge lot kind of army composition a lot earlier on, and then almost catching Neeb off guard, but then Neeb managing to, I think you were doing a great job pointing out what Neeb did really well and still making the best of that situation, getting back home and then mounting a kind of defense back there. I think those little moments shaped so much of that game, and it kind of put Astrea into this like pigeonhole of, I just need to keep making charge lots. And it made it really tough for him to actually transition that in the later stages as we saw those kind of army fights start to take place.
Yeah, it's not uncommon for people watching and even players to make an assessment of the game and what just happened and be like, yeah, it was the unit, right? But it was also the terrain that I think you did a wonderful job of pointing out. Neeb was finding that choke. There was an opportunity for Astrea, I think, to hit the 4th, and then you never have to contend with that choke. So if he had gone for the 4th instead, you have open ground for your charge lot army to take advantage of. I think I would have much preferred that, but chasing Neeb through the middle and going through that choke where the Stalkers are all sitting means that, you know, you have 30 Zealots, but only 7 are attacking at a time, right? And that's just far from ideal.
Yeah, I think that was definitely a tough spot, and I wouldn't have minded if Astrea had disengaged at that moment, and then just circumvented around. I really do wonder, I'm not even sure how I would feel if Astrea did take longer. If he cancels the 4th base, but Neeb just holds on to the 3 bases, it was still kind of 3 base versus 3 at that point. So I don't know. There's a lot of different interesting questions we could ask ourselves, but cats, instead of speculating on a game that is now concluded, let's go into a game that is about to begin. As we head into game number 2 with this man up here on the top left-hand side of the map, Captain America himself in the red from Onside Gaming, leading up 2-0. It's Neeb.
And on the bottom right-hand side, his opponent, he needs a comeback at this point. It is Alpha X's Astrea.
You know, Cats, it didn't occur to me, but I just realized we're getting a peek at Neeb's new, like, you know, housing situation where he's off to college, he's all grown up and stuff. That does not look like a dorm room. That looks like an apartment, though.
Yeah, with a boarded chimney.
Yeah, I think so.
Santa haters.
Well, look, let me tell you something. There ain't no dorm room that has just like a chimney, all right? No dorm room is that nice. Boarded or not.
Yep. I completely agree. So, yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, it's definitely a new situation for Neeb than we're used to. His old room with the art composter is now gone. Very cool. Both sides, actually.
Yeah, both players stole each other's gas. It's both players looked at their gases and said, I could take my gas, or I could take your gas instead. And they both spent the same 75 minutes to take their opponent's gas.
Yeah, I wonder who gas blocked first, actually. I wasn't paying enough attention, but yeah, whoever gas blocked first, the other player probably or had like less of an option, right? Because it's like, oh, now I'm floating the money that I would otherwise use to take my gas. So might as well.
I'm going to open up the stream because we are in the magic of the future. So we can watch the stream on a delay and see who took the gas first.
Wonderful. It's going to be Astrea that takes the back base first, which is rather interesting because it is a half base indeed. As our production just whispered that they are showing the split screen. So here we go. Aim high, my friends in the chat. This is what it's all about. U.S. Air Force bringing you this wonderful segment. So, yeah, you can see the screens are split.
Indeed they are. And these two players are both going to be doing the extra little bits of micro in the early game stages where you're just trying to block your opponent from taking their nexus, making things a little bit tougher to actually manage in that regard. But it, of course, is just standard at this point in the matchup where you really do just get up your early zealot and stuff. You do just get up your early defenses to help deal with the pylon block, is what I want to say. But Neeb went for the zealot. Astrea skipped it.
Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised about that because he has 2 buildings to kill. The zealot's going to be the most efficient cost-wise and just time-wise to actually kill those buildings. He, of course, has the back base. So there is some sense there in which, you know, like there is less of a hurry for Astrea to kill these structures because he can transfer over the probes and not be oversaturated in his main. But still, I think a zealot helps, right? Just to keep your opponent guessing as well.
Okay, so as we see, you know, probes and stuff getting picked up, I'm gonna say I finally caught up on the delay and everything. Astrea took the gas geyser first, which absolutely makes sense to me. That's very characteristic, I feel like, between the two. But interestingly, Astrea also sent out a probe at the very start of the game to get it there in time to steal gas. So it is gonna actually put him, like, in theoretically, it should put him a tiny bit behind. Now, Neeb is also able to put on this little bit of pressure on the shield battery. He's gonna be able to focus fire it down, and there's just not damage output over here for Astrea to deal with it.
Yeah, luckily for him, the next stalker is gonna show up, and that's gonna mean the stalker of Neeb is gonna fall. The zealot now tagged onto the sentry, which means the stalkers, I thought, had to chase it, but no, it's instead gonna be a defensive warping against that zealot. Oh, the sentry turns a corner and dies.
Yep, turning a corner. One of the hardest parts about running away from a unit that has the exact same speed as you. Yeah. Sentries, so that's going to be tough.
Yeah, that is a very, very good point. I actually didn't know that they had the exact same speed, but yeah, that corner certainly proving that.
Yeah. All right, well, a very, very strange start to this game. Like a lot of kind of... Oh. Okay, we're adding to the unusualness of it, but I guess that Neeb now knows that the stalkers are moving across the map, so he just will rightfully not move too far out from his natural and not lose any stalkers or anything. But he has that power kind of immortal position, and there's no blink or anything coming up, so Astrea Yeah, can't really push further forward by any means right here.
Yeah, but I really love that he is kind of like going out on the map and showing his opponent that he has forces because, you know, it might confuse Neeb a little bit. Neeb didn't really scout the base in the back. So there is a universe where he thinks that Astrea just took his natural base and that he is operating on the better front as far as the economy is concerned. Right now, Neeb is choosing to move out, but that move out from Astrea kind of says, hey, like I could be attacking you. You don't have map control. You don't have vision. You don't know if I'm warping in extra units. So kind of testing Neeb there, but Neeb doing a good job of reclaiming map control with these two Immortals and now looking for an attack. So yeah, it's not going to be easy for Astrea to hold if that shield battery is exposed, which it kind of is. Oh, yeah, don't chase him, don't chase him. No, that exposes the shield battery, Ratty.
Oh, it's... I almost want to say it could be all over. Like, yeah. I actually don't know how you defend your natural. If you don't defend your natural, your third is in a lot of trouble.
Well, the Immortals here.
Yeah. Well, okay, and Neeb actually doesn't get a chance to warp in, so there is a potential here.
Nice,
Aside from the Warp Prism.
Yeah, I mean, that is how you defend, I guess. It's still going to be enough. It's still very close. The Immortal is going to get surrounded by probes, and now with the probes, Astrea should barely be able to mount a defense. But yeah, two elements there. The Immortal from Astrea popping up at the perfect time, and then, like you said, no warping from Neeb. And then Astrea picking up the Warp Prism as quickly as he did. So a little bit of a mistake from Neeb, beautifully exploited by Astrea there.
Yeah, I'd actually venture to say, Cats, I feel like it was even more than a little mistake. I feel like that actually was a situation where Neeb could, I think, have pretty much just guaranteed himself a win there. If he had actually done the warp in as those units were moving down the natural, if he was just warping in there and killing off the shield battery, I actually don't know in what world Neeb loses that if he had one additional warp in. I actually think that I think he cleans that up.
Yeah, more likely than not. The problem for Neeb probably and the difficult assessment to make is he only had 2 gateways to work with. So he could have worked in 2 extra Stalkers, or he could have microed to try to save the Immortal, right? Which is still very valuable as well. When you have 2 Immortals, the Warp Prism gains so much value when you're microing it. So yeah, I think he overextended a little bit with the Warp Prism, but I can understand why the Warp Prism was just trying to make sure that his Immortals lived and output as much damage as they could.
Yeah, that's entirely fair. I agree. Like, if also like you're able to keep the Immortal alive instead and not lose the Prism, that also is a nice pathway to victory. But yeah, either way, I mean, I think at the end of the day, even though it's maybe a missed opportunity there, things kind of end up. I don't want to say totally even, just because obviously Astrea's had that third base now this entire time, whereas Neeb is just establishing a third now, whereas Astrea's going up to 4 bases and everything, so I do like Astrea's economic situation a lot better. We'll see if Neeb can kind of bounce back from that, though.
Yeah, completely agreed. It's going to be Neeb on the bounce back. I mean, that attack was still pretty scary for Astrea. He did lose a bunch of units and some probes in the process as well. Neeb not completely out of it by any means, but he is going to have to find a way for recovery or some sort of timing. It's going to be a 4th that he opts for. So, yeah. Kind of just pursuing the later stages of the game here.
Yeah, and I like that he was just going for the faster tech up into the Archons. So his Templar Archives is already finished up. He's already morphing in Archons. This is substantially faster than how fast Astrea was looking to go for something like that. So I think that's where he might be able to try and find a little bit of extra firepower to just hold off against any kind of early game attacks. And look at this, a Hallucinate Colossus. Okay, that could be a mistake and not some crazy sick mind game, but I like to think it's a crazy sick mind game where he's revealing a Colossus that's going to throw Astrea off in terms of the tech choice, and then he's not going to be expecting a big attack coming forward.
Well, here's the big attack. The Zealots are on hold position for Astrea to make sure that they don't run forward, but that means Neeb is going to get a good engagement as Astrea wasn't paying attention to start this attack.
Ooh.
Now Astrea on the other side doing a lot of damage potentially onto that mineral line, but those are not charge slots on this. Oh, now they are. Now charge has finished for Astrea, and that means that he is going to have a lot of firepower here, but so does Neeb, a little bit more even with those Archons. And here comes the Warp Prism to save the Archon and reposition it should he need to against those Zealots. 3 Immortals still remaining are going to gun down any buildings extremely fast. And Neeb turning the tides here in spite of Astrea holding that economic lead. Really just a really good engagement here to start things off.
Yeah, I'm actually a little bit surprised that Astrea disengaged, but I guess he's really respecting the heck out of that single Archon, which has racked up, I think, 9 kills on different Zealots and everything. And now Neeb, with the kill on that base, is going to secure himself such, like you said, a massive economic lead. Yes, he's taken a couple of losses back at home. He's still losing a few workers here and there. but he can easily just pin back Astrea onto the awkward, like, 3-ish bases. It's not even 3 bases, like 2 3/4.
Yeah, that's very well put. It is, it is not a full base in the back there, whereas Neeb is working with 4 full bases. So he has a lot of longevity in his economy, and he is still have a lot of army here trying to push on forward and kill Astrea right here, right now, to claim a 3-0 lead. That would be absurd, but it seems to be like what we're in for here, Ravi.
Yeah, Astrea looks like he's getting closer and closer to holding, but as the reinforcements come in, it becomes very obvious that Neeb is going to be able to take in that 3-0 lead that we were talking about, and is looking damn strong doing it. The things got a little bit hectic and weird that game for sure, especially at the start. But Neeb still just comes out on top at the end. And well, Cats, I'm very, very interested to find out if we're going to have a repeat of Europe and it's just going to be like some crazy reverse sweep now, or if this is actually going to be like the 4-0 or something.
It very well could be. I mean, Neeb is playing incredibly well right now. Let's see if Astrea has that same resilience that Clem showed, and if he can turn it around. In any case, I mean, Clem spoke of this as well, right? Like when he is down 0-3, you're kind of just resigned. You're just like, you know, let's show a good game and see what happens. So maybe easing extra pressure in that regard will serve Astrea well. But we're yet to see. I think for that game, the main thing was that Astrea was kind of on hold position with a lot of the sellouts when the engagement started, and that gives like free damage output from the ranged units. That is what Neeb was primarily working with, right? So while you're hold position, your sellouts are not doing anything, but I understand the hold position. You don't want him to run forward out of nowhere, and that's the position that he wanted to hold. Just needed to pay attention a little bit quicker. Neeb completely exploiting that. And the Archon timing that you mentioned as well, right? Like really powerful against charge slots. So Neeb doing a very good job there to close that game.
Yeah, it's a good identification, I feel like, from Neeb, especially after game number 1, where Astrea just in the series has been pretty charge lot heavy over stalker heavy. So I wonder if that's maybe part of the decision-making process, if it was just Neeb kind of saying, well, I was in a rough spot, so I just need to make something happen. Either way, we're going to be moving into here game number 3 with this player down in the bottom left-hand side of the map, leading up this series 3-0, needs one more to lock it down for this season of DreamHack North America SC2 Masters. He is Onside Gaming's Neeb.
And in the top right-hand side, his opponent, he needs a massive comeback at this point. It is for Alpha X, Astrea.
It's funny though, Cass, because I feel like in the 2 games we've had so far, it's not like I feel as though Astrea's getting massively outplayed. I don't feel like Astrea's getting build order countered or anything like that. It feels like there's just very small little moments in time where big game-changing kind of things happen, right? Where it's just where one player is deciding to like take an engagement and they kind of reveal to each other their army compositions and start taking trades, and there's like a little bit of better micro on one side or the other, but it's really small things. I feel like they are making the big differences in these games so far.
I completely agree. Yeah, I think it was very small margins there on both fronts, right? Neeb had the opportunity to potentially end the game earlier, like you mentioned as well during the game. So that would have been a missed opportunity from him. But yeah, it really is those little things, and they can really snowball in this matchup as well. So I mean, I'm not going to lie, it would be a little bit disappointing if we have 3-0 followed by a 4-0 for the North American portion, as good as EU was. Really want a little bit more from this series, so let's see if Astrea can channel and bring us that action, that excitement.
Yeah, interesting here, as we have Neeb. He, contrary to how game number 1 went, where Cats, you were kind of mentioning this, Neeb does not go for the Nexus or the pylon block at the natural. So Astrea actually gets up a Nexus completely uncontested without even starting. He didn't even queue up a Zealot and cancel it. He just never had a Zealot going. But Neeb goes for the gas steal in the main.
Yeah, I think that's what Astrea was hoping for in game number 1, right? And he gets it here in game number 3. So taking a little bit of a risk, but it's gonna pan out. It's gonna work out for him as long as he can defend the consequent attack here, the Zealot into the Oracle. Astrea is gonna be economically in an insanely good position as the shield battery there dies.
Yeah, Zealot is gonna eventually get whittled away at. It's gonna be unfortunate loss there for Neeb, but you're always hoping that you can get continued damage to some of the reinforcing units there. The Adept can force these units around. But, you know, the other nice thing about the gas steal, because you don't see this super crazy often, is that Neeb also identifies, there's a shield battery in the main. Like, and I already know there's a shield battery in the natural. So you actually have full scouting information for your oracles.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, that's not the information that you wanted. You wanted to gather the information that there isn't a shield battery somewhere, ideally, right? Because he's gonna be pretty sad about that. He's already behind economically, and he needs a way to find damage. Astrea here with a very beautiful unorthodox wall.
Yeah, that was in fact not a wall.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that is not a wall. There is a gap on the left, I think, right? Oh, actually, hold on. The gap on the left may be covered by the gateway.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, okay.
Right. Astrea is going to be chasing these Adepts now. As Neeb tries to make his way back into Astrea's main.
Not going to be able to make it there with both of these Adepts. So one of them will go down. The second one is also going to probably take a little bit of extra damage here. And wow. I love this position on inside and out. Known pretty well in PvP for DT warp in spot. But Adept warp in spot, also pretty effective.
Pretty effective indeed, and with that, Astrea is going to go potentially into the main. He could just go for the probes at the natural, as they are going to be easy pickings, and yeah, he's going to go just for the transfer. Probably move to the natural would have been a play here, but no, he's just going to go into the main. Neeb is going to be forced to recall. This is a nightmare scenario for Neeb. I mean, this is one of his 2 oracles. He had a timing, and I was about to say these 2 oracles really need to find damage, because otherwise he is in a very precarious position as far as the economy is concerned, and Astrea is still continuing to apply pressure. This looks terrible for Neeb.
I don't want to call the game early, Cats, but I think he's dead. Like, I actually legitimately am trying to think really, really hard. What tools does Neeb have available? Okay, here's my idea. If you can stasis trap all of these stalkers at the top of the ramp, you can re-stasis them right as the first stasis is about to expire. That's like the kind of level of time buying that Neeb needs, and he is not going to be able to find it as both of the oracles get focus fired down. The entire army is gone, and Astrea takes the game and finally puts one on the board.
Yeah, very convincing game as well from Astrea, start to finish, not leaving Neeb any room to breathe, and just kind of exploiting advantages that he didn't even need to exploit, because he could have just sat back happily and known that he had the economic lead from taking that Nexus, from Neeb investing into that gas, which effectively kind of goes to waste, right? If that gas doesn't open you up for the Oracle damage that Neeb was looking for, which it didn't, then the gas steal is just, you know, an extra set of resources that you've wasted while your opponent is accelerated to take his natural expansion. So yeah, it was just a nightmarish situation for Neeb, and yeah, Astrea just, you know, he had him on the ground and he just kept punching anyway.
Yeah, I think it's a risk that Neeb took with that kind of opening. There was not only the gas steal, but also it's the idea for throwing down the pylon there. And also you're trying to hope that, like, oh, if I go for the pylon here, my opponent doesn't go for a stalker, they went for like an adept or something instead, then they don't have the damage output, or maybe they don't pull workers to kill off the shield battery. Then things can start to escalate, because then your reinforcements arrive and there's a shield battery that you have in your opponent's natural. There's like that world, but there's also the other world where maybe they still get a stalker, but you have a pylon, and we saw like the very strange wall. The strange wall was there because Neeb had a pylon in the middle of where normally Astrea would wall. So the idea is then the Adepts can get in, but Astrea did some really, really nice last second re-walling in there. So I feel like Astrea definitely gets some commendation for how he handled all that, but
absolutely,
I also don't mind that Neeb tried it. You know, you're up 3-0. I think that's actually a great time to take risks and try some really funky stuff to keep your opponent honest in the PvP.
Absolutely, and I think that's great that you point that out, because yeah, it was the Zealot, it was the follow-up Adepts, and then it was the follow-up Oracle, then the follow-up Oracles, and none of it really worked out for Neeb. But if you get the snowball rolling, if the first Zealot, you know, allows you to get the battery, if the first Adepts get in as a result of the chaos that they're causing, and then if the Oracles pile onto the damage, it can become very difficult for Astrea. Just not the case this time around, because he shut it down very early, very easily, and it just looked impossible for Neeb.
Yeah, I think that was definitely a tough spot for Neeb. But it's one of those situations where I think it's a risk you take trying for that kind of stuff, and you're pretty much okay with like if things don't go that way, then I think that's fine. And I don't think that this is not like the series from Europe where Raynor versus Clem. Oh, this isn't like a momentum halter, kind of what Clem had in stopping some of Raynor's momentum and Clem picking up some steam there. I do feel like these series have again been on such thin margins in terms of thin margin or small thing that happens in the game that really escalates into a bigger thing very, very quickly. So it feels like almost like each one of these games, it's a all, I don't know. The vibe that I have on this, Cats, is that each one of these games is almost like a little bit more self-contained, as opposed to the European side of things where it was Cyril versus, or sorry, Raynor versus Clem. Each game was almost building into the next one.
Yeah, for sure. That is a very good way to put it, I think. As yeah, or even the Astrea versus Scarlet series, right? Like that was a little bit more of a build-up as well from one game to the other. So yeah, these games are pretty unique so far in approach. That's just the magic of PvP, because there's so much variety as well. There's just so much, you know, so many different options that you can take early on. And yeah, and even though that is true, a lot of the openers are mirrored, right? Because the meta has us at a point where it's like, if it's a ramped map, more often than not, players are going to go for the pylon on the low ground. And from there are only so many options. And there's also the fact that in this matchup, the probe gets to scout and gets to stay a little bit longer, as you know, on the side of your opponent. So there's also less concealing and less trickery that can be done.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting. I do want to mention that one of the most wild and wacky PvP maps is the next map. I feel like I have yet to see a normal looking PvP on this map. And I'm hoping that that streak is not going to be broken here, Cats. As I head on to Stargazers, we're going to be moving into the top left-hand side to look at the red Protoss player who may have lost that last game, but is still at match point for this entire tournament. He is Onside Gaming's Neeb.
And in the top right-hand side, it is for Alpha X. Still needs 3 in a row. It's Astrea.
I love this map, Cats. I love watching other people play on this map.
I love both. I love this map, and I love people watching people play in this map.
The only reason why I don't enjoy playing, actually, I do enjoy playing on this map, but I enjoy cannon rushing on this map because that gas geyser right there that we see, that left-hand gas geyser, there's some really, really dirty, like 3 pylon and 4 pylon walls that you can do around that. So that's what I enjoy about it. But from a spectator perspective, I love watching PvPs on this map because, again, like they oftentimes get really wild and wonky, and I think it's a combination of the really short air distance. So you see basically like if you put down a Stargate in that by like the mineral patch base, that's kind of like your in base. It's almost a proxy because it's so close to your opponent. There's things like that. There's proxy robo positions. Your main base is so massive. There's like the fact that there is an in base thing. There's a high ground, or like there's no high ground, I should say, to your natural. There's just so many weird things about this map that just encourage strangeness in PvP.
Yeah, already Astrea taking one of those routes as he's going to wall off with double pylons and a gateway at the front, making a salad as well to follow and shoo away the probe. But that means he's going to be concealing a lot of information from Neeb, and it's going to be a robo follow-up of all things from Astrea. Going to be very difficult for Neeb to scout as Astrea goes next into a sentry. A little bit dangerous against a Neeb that is going for double stalker. And this is where it gets a little bit funky, because if you are Astrea and you show no information, it is very easy on the side of Neeb to be like, I need a sentry to actually scout. But Neeb is going for the stalkers, and that could be very dangerous for Astrea, who I think is trying to get a little bit greedy here, perhaps.
Yeah, he's going to see the first 2 stalkers. You don't necessarily know what's going to be coming out 3 and 4 for the gateways, but
yeah, Astrea is doing the nasty. Actually, he has dropped an additional 2 gateways, and the robo this is going to be an all-in, kind of telling Neeb instead, I am being greedy, I am taking my back base, but he hasn't even begun to mind that. He is also going to spot this pylon.
Yeah, he scouts the pylon, but Neeb is actually going to be going for the Nexus now, and this is where things get a little bit weird, because if Neeb... All right, this can play on, I feel like, one of 2 major ways. One is that Neeb does this little push across the map, gets caught a bit unexpectedly by all like the sentries, gets forcibly in, loses too many units, and then just dies very one-sidedly to the big all-in that's coming. The other one is that Neeb actually identifies that there's this big attack coming with the Stalkers and is actually able to get up enough defenses back at home to help defend because he moved out.
Yeah, here comes Astrea. Is going to reveal his army, however. Will catch 2 Stalkers for his troubles, but this should be a heads up as well for Neeb as far as what he's going to have to defend against. I love the hallucinated Oracle for Astrea as well. It's only slightly slower than the Phoenix, and it could force a reaction from your opponent. So I personally, with Protoss, have my X rebound to Oracle. I think that is a really good way to do it. And yeah,
I'm with you, Cats. But here's one counter thought. If you're one base all-inning your opponent, do you want your opponent to like warp in reflexively Stalkers back at home? Or would you want them to think, ah, yes, it's a Phoenix. I don't need to do anything here. I'll continue to make probes and not units that I need to help defend.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a shield battery in the middle line is not obviously bad for a frontal attack.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but otherwise, I think you're onto something. I mean, the Phoenix is a little bit less threatening, and the Oracle could force more of a warp in. So let's see here. Astrea has a lot of units. This is dirty indeed. This is a lot. I'm not sure that Neeb can hold, and he doesn't even have control of his ramp. He's going to have to utilize a recall to get back into his main, and that's exactly what he is going to do. He's also going to need to pull probes as well as overcharge his battery, and that's exactly what he's going to do. Is he going to have enough, though?
It's going to be tough because he's not even getting reinforcements. His gateways are depowered. He has literally 0 units on the way. So if he doesn't defend now, he is never going to defend this. And he's already dropped below the worker count of Astrea. Yeah. He still had 2 bases, so that was okay for a bit. But he is not making progress. That Immortal for Astrea is up to 6 kills, soon to be 7. And there it is. Astrea throws another one on the board on Stargazers.
Yeah, with the Nasty as well. Another build that I've never seen before. A cheeky smile there. He thinks he's the villain. He doesn't care. He don't care.
Yeah, you know, Stargazers always lives up to it, man. Stargazers it's a great PvP map. I mean, it's a terribly frustrating map to play on for PvP. But watching games on PvP on Stargazers, oh, fine wine, man, fine wine.
Fine wine indeed. I mean, yeah, I really like our current map pool, but yeah, Stargazers is probably my favorite map to watch out of all of the maps because it's different, and I really hope that like the majority of people feel that way, because even if the players do veto it mostly, imagine a map where we have 7 Stargazer-like maps, then they can't veto them all, and then we get cool games all the time.
That was the Dream Pool, Cats. It was fantastic. I had so much fun during the Dream Pool.
The Dream Pool was good?
Dream Pool. Okay, well, Dream Pool was a little bit different, but I realize now we've had so many years passed since the Dream Pool that there might be actually a lot of people who don't know about the Dream Pool. The Dream Pool was this magnificent time, in my mind, when Blizzard said, hey guys, we're going to let you vote on any map from the entire history of StarCraft that you want in the map pool. And people voted for like the oldest of old school maps that were all very well not suited for the current meta at the time. So it was like Steps of War and all the maps that were very, very small.
Yeah, I guess maps at the start were very, very small, but yeah, people had good memories of them, you know, because yeah, and I mean the meta that evolved there was consistent with the maps. A lot of people think that StarCraft just, you know, back then it was like, oh, players just get aggressive because that's the case, but the maps really lended themselves to that, like 4 gates and just nasty aggression all over the place. I love to see it personally. But we are here now and talk about small maps. This is the biggest one that we have in the current map pool. And this map pool, you know, we're getting to the bigger and bigger maps as the years progress. So in the top left-hand side, it is for On-Site Gaming, looking for his map and match victory point. It's Neeb.
Down here in the bottom right-hand side of the map from Alpha X, he is starting to bounce back in the series. He is Astrea. I also want to note, Kalaris messages us in chat. The Dream Pool was an abomination.
It was a little bit abominable. I'm not gonna lie. But I think map makers have gotten a lot better, right? Like, cause now map makers like have like their design fundamentals, like based on like what the players do. So even the weird maps are good, like Stargazers. Like it's a weird, strange map, different, but it's not without without thought. Like whereas at the start of Wings of Liberty, I guess we had like maps like Lost Temple that just had like a high ground ramp behind the natural where you couldn't get there, and just like Thor drops were completely busted on it and stuff like that. Those are oversights that we don't make anymore.
Yeah, exactly. I think what makes a map interesting is that there can be creative play on the map, but it's not just like, okay, there's this one OP build and now that's all we see on it, and that's the only thing you can do. And there we got those good old first-person perspectives as we see Neeb scouting probe moving forward, and same thing for Astrea. But Neeb is actually going to go ahead and bounce out of there nice and early on, because Astrea did go for high ground gateways, and that always, like any Protoss player that sees the high ground gateways in this matchup, you can think, okay, this could just be a 2-gate in the high ground, or it could be a proxy robo or something along those lines. You have to respect that potential.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, high ground gateway is also pretty much the standard on most of these maps that don't have ramps leading to them. But Neeb is actually kind of breaking the norm by doing the low ground gateway, if anything, on this map. And it is more justifiable than on other maps just because it is so lengthy as well, right? It is a very long rush distance. But Astrea looking for his third cheeky win in a row if he can find it. This is going to be another quick and dirty map. But if you are a Neeb fan, you got to be a little bit happy that he is also dropping his robo. Will that be in time? Will he be able to chrono boost out an Immortal in order to fend off the forces of Max?
Yeah, an important aspect of this also is going to be Neeb's pylon at the natural. I wanna really highlight how important that pylon is, because it is going to be the thing that's keeping Warp Gate researching. It is the thing powering one of the important gateways, and it's also going to be the thing that's powering the shield battery that is likely going to need to be overcharged at some point during all this. So that might be a vulnerable target, and I bring that up specifically because, well, in PvP, if you have a wall in like this, it can get a little bit awkward because your opponent, you're basically going to be defending through your own choke point. It gets really, really awkward to actually try and attack your opponent's units.
It can be indeed. So let's see what Astrea is able to accomplish here. As apparently my mic clipped during the intro, so people think I didn't say no. Yeah, it was too high pitched, I guess. Here's the Immortal though, Ravs. And one gateway already falling. That's scary. Yeah.
Production capabilities for Neeb are not only halted in the sense that there's one less gateway, but even the robo just being a little bit later means Neeb's first Immortal arrives a little bit later. But it is actually here. It's sitting at the natural expansion ramp.
Yeah, and also the first force field missed from Astrea, that's not a small deal, right? Like you build that unit for that force field, and it didn't pan out. It's supposed to net you a unit or two ideally, and it won't for Astrea. So, you know, that kind of sucks, but he is going to force some units up the high ground with these two adepts, leaving the Immortal on the low ground by the looks of it. Will he punch in the natural expansion while this is all going on? Not for the time being. Only finding 3 probes worth of damage.
Yeah, interesting. That I actually really thought that Astrea would at least poke at the Cyber Core during all of that, but it is a bit micro-intensive to move those adepts around while also trying to make sure the Warp Prism doesn't get picked off by your opponent's Stalkers. Oh, there's the Force Field and the Warp Prism for Neeb, saving that Immortal. That is critical. If Neeb loses that Immortal, that could very well actually spell doom and disaster for the game, as the Immortals are going to be the big firepower units for these fights.
Yeah, and that's why it's so cool that Neeb went for a Warp Prism, and why people go for the Warp Prism for the micro potential as well, right? Like, that's actually so important that Neeb gets it. I mean, he doesn't need it for Warp Pins, obviously, and he's not planning to transport anything just yet. It is just to save that Immortal from the force field, should Astrea make more of those. Now, Astrea mixing it up, he's going to have the Immortals going into the high ground to contest the Stalkers as multiple adepts. 2 of them are gonna shade into the natural expansion of Neeb. Still Astrea without an expansion. He needs some damage. Let's see how much he can find.
This is gonna be really interesting though, because Neeb, he is still up about 7 or 8 workers. So far the damage has not been enough. And remember, this is basically sacrificing units to try and get some damage done. The Immortals drop out in the main base, but they're actually target firing down Zealots first. They do mention that a Stalker do force Neeb into a slightly awkward position, but I mean, Astrea is sacrificing units to buy himself a bit of time to get up the Disruptors. This, oh god, did the Disruptor get seen? by the
I'm not
Phoenix?
sure. It was very, very close. But this is a very powerful disruptor regardless, because Neeb has very little room to wiggle here. He's going to be up against walls, but the first shot completely whiffs. Not ideal for Astrea, but he still has 3 Immortals here at the front as well. So Neeb's going to be forced to pop the shield battery overcharge. On the other side, however, Neeb has 2 Immortals. This is going to force Astrea to respawn. Maybe with a little bit, he has to separate enough of his army perhaps to go for a recall. He's just going to opt to get some Zealots out there and just prevent further damage or absorb a little bit of damage while he goes for the kill move. Here comes the next Disruptor. It will get picked up by a beautiful Phoenix from Neeb. The second one clips the Immortal, but it's had its shields to work with as well. So Neeb is looking very strong on the defense. Be careful. However, you don't want to expose your Stalkers against 2 Immortals, much less 3. So Neeb has to tackle and run for the time being. On the other side, the Immortals still doing a lot of damage as they 2-shot probes.
Yeah, Astrea is effectively not mining. This is almost everything that Astrea is going to have for the remainder of this game if he cannot clean up those Immortals on the other side of the map. So this is do or die now. And remember, the Phoenix are continuing to build up additional energy. Neeb is going to have the ability to lift up those Disruptors yet again. Disruptors get canceled.
Yeah, just absolutely masterclass here on the defense from Neeb, anticipating the Disruptors going for the Stargate and getting the Phoenix. I mean, that was just absolutely brilliant from him of a defense. Now one of the Disruptors have fallen, and it's only the Immortal backbone that Astrea has to work with. It looks like we have a champion here, Ravi. It looks impossible now for Astrea to make anything happen. GG is called, and Neeb is the champion.
He is going to be king of North America.